Hello and welcome to Aftersight. This is your host, Penn Street. Today's episode, I am actually going to share my story with you. Over the past 23 episodes, I have had the amazing privilege to interview incredible people with amazing stories. And I realized I haven't told you my story. So today I'm going to do that. So sit back and relax, and I hope you walk away today learning why it's so important for me that people realize and truly understand that there really is life after sight. When I was 9 years old, I was bitten by a very angry western diamondback rattlesnake. And the venom, of course, made me very ill. I was bitten twice. I was bitten on my hip and on my face. And the snake actually bit my little sister after he was finished with me. And yes, I call the snake a he. I don't know why. Even as a little kid, that snake was always a he. Maybe it's because I grew up with 7 older brothers. And so, just being picked on a lot, I just called the snake a he. Anyway, after I was bitten, to save my life, the doctors, of course, gave me a ton of medication, everything from antibiotics for the snake bites to anti-seizure medication to anti-venom, even children's aspirin to bring down my fever, all kinds of stuff. And all of that medication triggered a syndrome called Stevens-Johnson syndrome. SJS is the acronym, which I will be using from here on in. SJS is a rare adverse drug reaction, and at that time, when I was 9 years old, the fatality rate was about 75%, so the odds weren't very high in my favor. If you want to learn more about SJS, you can go to the website sjsupport.org. Again, that's sjsupport.org. And I do want to let you know that if you do have vision and you can see the website, if you do click on the images, they are very graphic because SJS, the way it triggers, it basically burns you alive from the inside out. So 75% of my body was covered in 2nd and 3rd degree burns. So some of the photos that you might see on the website are pretty graphic and horrific. It's a horrible, horrible syndrome. So like I said, I was basically burning alive from the inside out. So my parents rushed me to our local emergency room, and there, luckily, the doctor that was on call had just graduated from his residency from medical school, and he had learned about Stevens-Johnson syndrome. And so he basically took one look at me, and when my parents told them the medications that I'd been taking and why, he knew that I was in grave danger, and immediately sent me to Little Rock, Arkansas Children's Hospital, where they treated me in a burn unit. When I got down there, they told my parents that if I made it through the night, it was not because of anything they did. I was that far gone. And that they were going to make me comfortable by putting me in a drug-induced coma. So my parents are very strong. They believe in their faith. And so they started making phone calls asking for prayers. Well, all of those people started making phone calls to everybody they knew to start prayers coming my way, and all of those people. And literally within 24 hours, there was prayers going up for my survival all around the world. And I don't know, all of you out there, if you believe in faith or prayer, but I do. I really believe that all of those prayers going out was what really pulled me through. So they kept me in this drug-induced coma, which, of course, I don't really remember anything about. But I was a fighter. I was a little tomboy. Like I said, I had 7 older brothers to keep up with. So I was a tomboy, and I was a strong kid. I was raised on a farm. I only ate healthy vegetables and fruit and meat that came from our farm. I was very healthy, great, high immune system and all of those things in my favor. So a little over a week went by. It was about the 10th day. The doctor said that they felt that I was strong enough that they were going to ease me out of the coma. And, well, during those 10 days in the hospital, my parents were inundated with stuffed animals and cards and all kinds of things, wishing me a full recovery. And so I was in the intensive care unit, and it was very, very sterile. But there was one stuffed animal that they allowed in, and it was this stuffed monkey. And as I started coming to, my dad held the stuffed monkey up in front of my face, and he said, Penny, wake up. It's time to wake up. And I was raised in a family that was very strict, and you did what your parents told you to do, even though you didn't want to do it. And so I heard my dad's voice, and the doctors and my parents, they were very cautious, because the doctors told my parents that if I had survived, which is what I was doing, that I would be totally blind, I would be deaf, I would be on a feeding tube for the rest of my life, and I probably wouldn't be able to breathe on my own. And also, because my fever remained so very, very high for so long, they felt that I was also going to wake up with severe brain damage. So there's my dad holding this, stuffed monkey in front of me and telling me to wake up. So it hurt like the Dickens for me to open my eyes, because if you can imagine being in a fire and how uncomfortable it is to open your eyes or to use your voice for the first time, it was very painful. But I managed to get my eyes open, and, my dad said, Penny, it's time to wake up. And I really couldn't see anything. Everything was really fuzzy. So I tried to respond to my dad of what I was seeing, and I said, fuzzy. The only thing that would come out is fuzzy. Well, the room erupted in joy and relief, and it's because my dad thought I was naming the stuffed monkey Fuzzy. So therefore, they all thought, okay, well, she heard what my dad was asking. I reacted. I could speak. I could hear. And I was talking on my own, and they felt like, okay, she's going to be okay. She's going to be okay. Little did they know, I did not even see the monkey, and I was trying to explain that what I was seeing was Fuzzy. But Fuzzy became his name, and even to this day, he still has a very, very special place at the end of my bed. And he will always remain there, because that monkey represents the turning point of coming out of that coma, and that I was going to be okay. While I was in the hospital, the nurses were phenomenal, and each day was, a new joyous occurrence. Every time, I could pick up a spoon and feed myself, or take a deep breath, or any of those things that we all take for granted now, that if I could do it, it was a celebration. So the nurses went to my parents and said, Penn, she's a fighter, but she's never going to be able to see the way she saw before. So what's going to be the biggest challenge for her? We would like to get on top of this and start teaching her some skills while she's still recovering here in the hospital. And my parents told them, it's reading. She loves to read. She's a bookworm. She always has a book in her hand, no matter where we go, what she's doing. She may be sitting at the top of the tree she just climbed, but she always has her books with her. And so the nurses on their own, they went out and they contacted the National Library Services, and got a cassette player and a book on tape. It was Little House on the Prairie by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And they introduced me to it, and I listened to that book over and over again and ended up listening to the entire series of Little House in the Big Woods series many, many times. And, it wasn't easy. I spent a ton of my childhood in and out of the hospitals for a variety of reasons. Because, again, think about being in a fire. It wasn't just my skin that had burned. It was all of my organs. I have had heart issues and lung issues and liver and kidney and you name it. But I was a tomboy, and I came back strong. And as I got older, I really did realize that I could live a full life. My dad was awesome about, go ahead, get back on your bicycle. And I took some falls and scrapes and bruises and that kind of thing. But he was really good about, if you want to do it, try it. My mom was definitely more protective. She really wanted to shelter me. And, but between my older brothers and my dad, I was able to, go back to school. It took a while for me to be able to go back to school, but once I did, it was amazing. I was a really smart kid. I knew how to get good grades. I knew how to engage the teachers. So I always did really well in school, even though until actually even going on to college, I really never went a full week of school ever again, because with all the health issues, there was always something that hurt or needed attention. So, but I was smart. I knew the system, and I knew how to soak up all that information. And then as I got older, wanted to go to college, and I wanted to get, my career going. And along the way, I had incredible teachers and mentors, and that was my goal in life, is I wanted to someday be able to help other blind people and make them feel like they were part of their communities and that they didn't need to sit on the sidelines. So I went to school for special education. I taught in several different group homes for high school students that were getting ready to go into college that had, a disability or some sort of challenge in their life, and I absolutely loved it. I worked with the Down syndrome students and helped get them ready for adulthood, and just loved it. Then I met my husband. If you want to go back and listen to the very, very first episode of Aftersight, you'll get to meet Moses, my husband. And Moses was and still is a professional photographer, so his entire world is visual. And together we built an incredible photographic studio and gallery and got to travel to some just really incredible places doing that. But then my retina hemorrhaged in my good eye, and I spiraled. I went into a very, very dark place. And it seems silly now looking back at it, because I had all the skills. I mean, I was even teaching blind students how to rock climb in Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado. I knew how to use a cane. I knew all the skills. But suddenly waking up with this giant gap in my vision again really threw me for a loop. But then a really good friend of mine, Dianka, up in Estes Park, Colorado, she introduced me to Eric Wymeyer, who was the first blind person to summit Mount Everest. And I met Eric, and we became friends, and I started fundraising for the Stevens-Johnson Syndrome Foundation, and actually used his film as a fundraiser and really got involved with his nonprofit called No Barriers and volunteered a ton for them, helped them raise money. And the reason that No Barriers was a really good fit for me was because their motto is, "What's within you is stronger than what's in your way. And I drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. I got very involved with No Barriers and ended up becoming full-time on staff with them for 5.5 years. And during my time with No Barriers, I got to plan amazing hikes to tops of mountains that, as a team, we were able to get people in wheelchairs to the summit. I took a group of high school students that were blind and visually impaired, and we rafted the entire Grand Canyon. I got to do all these amazing, incredible adventures and be part of really changing the world and how people viewed people with disabilities. And it was really important work to me. And then COVID hit. And again, I went into this really downward spiral, a really dark place. No Barriers pretty much went under. They're, trying to, scrape their way back up to the top again. And I really do hope them well. But they laid off, 98% of their staff. And I freaked out because the unemployment rate for people who are blind and visually impaired is somewhere between 70 and 80% in a good economy. And here I was in, the world was getting laid off and furloughed and it was so uncertain. And I just really had to pull myself up by my bootstraps and did contract work and things like that, and did some amazing work. I had a really good time meeting new people and making connections, and got to do an incredible hike to the top of a 13,000 plus peak with Eric and his team, helping a wonderful, beautiful lady, Melissa Simpson, which again, if you'll listen back to a few episodes, you'll hear her story. And the doors started opening, and I found out about this job at Audio Information Network of Colorado was hiring, and I, applied and went through the whole process, and they chose me. They really chose me, and that's what it felt like. And I love it here. I love the work that I get to do, and I love this podcast, and I love raising money for Audio Information Network of Colorado, and I absolutely love my team here. We all bring to the table a lot of different skills, a lot of diversity, and we make it all work. And I'm really, really blessed to be here. So that's a little bit about my story, and I am not going to tell you that it's been easy, because it's really been hard. I busted up my right hand, about 10 days ago skiing. And again, that knocked me, that really knocked me into a dark place. I spent, a full afternoon really crying my eyes out because, as you're blind and visually impaired. Our hands, they're our eyes. And to have one of those taken away really hurts, not just physically, but emotionally. And so for a month, I really only have this one hand, and it's not even my strong hand. I'm right-handed, and it's my right hand I busted up. And, people tell me all the time, Penn, you're so inspirational, you're so strong. Yeah, we all put our best faces forward in the world, or we try to. But I'm telling you right now, I don't know a single person that deals with a disability that doesn't shut down and want to crawl back under the covers and hide away and just cry, feel miserable. But I do hope that all of you find a way, to push back those covers and continue to move forward, continue to search for that job, search for that community connection, or whatever it is that you're looking for. Because I do know that if you keep trying and you keep trying, those doors are going to open for you, and you're going to find those connections so that you can reach those goals in your life that you've been searching for. I'm the mom of two beautiful stepdaughters. I don't like calling them stepdaughters because they have felt like my daughters since the moment I met them. I have 3 amazing grandchildren through them. I have 2 incredible son-in-laws. Yes, I like my son-in-laws. And I really do have an incredible life. And I don't, really there isn't much I would ever change about it. I am a big believer that I am here at this point in my life for a reason. I don't understand what that reason is sometimes. But I'm still here after all these years. When those doctors told my parents that if I survived, it wasn't by anything that they did, I still believe that. Every time I wake up in the morning, I give thanks that I'm still here. I'm still here for another day, and I'm open to whatever challenges or whatever gifts that I'm given in that day. So that's my story, and I hope you've enjoyed it. And never hesitate to reach out to me here at Audio Information Network of Colorado, because I would love to hear your story and share it with the world. Just email me, Penn, Penn, at aincolorado.org. Again, it's Penn, Penn, at aincolorado.org. And no matter what you do today, remember that there is life after sight.